The corridors of Station Kepler 9 hummed with the usual cacophony of 100 different species going about their business. Orla pressed herself against the cold metal wall, her heart hammering against her ribs as she watched the small creature pace nervously 20 meters ahead. It was a Reiki cub, no more than 3 cycles old by her estimation. Its 6 legs trembled as it called out in high-pitched chirps, searching for its pack mother. The crystalline scales along its spine flickered with distress colors, deep purples and anxious oranges that any spacer worth their salt could read. "Don't move!" Lewis's voice crackled through her comm link. "Station security is 2 sections away. They'll handle it." Orla didn't respond. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the cub. The Reiki were apex predators on their homeworld of Rec Prime, a death world by galactic standards where gravity pulled 3 times harder than Earth's, and the atmosphere could strip flesh from bone during storm season. Adult Reiki stood nearly 4 meters tall, possessed retractable claws that could shear through hull plating, and had jaw strength measured in the thousands of psi. They were obligate carnivores, members of the Predator Council, and their treaties with other species were built on mutual respect and healthy fear. This cub, however, was terrified. "Orla, I'm serious," Lewis continued, his tone sharpening. "Reiki cubs are still dangerous. One swipe could—" "It's scared, Lewis." Orla finally whispered back. "It's just a baby." She'd seen that look before. Different species, different circumstances, but fear was universal. During her years as a xenobiological responder, she'd learned that panic looked the same whether it had 2 legs, 6, or none at all. The cub's head swiveled toward her, its 4 compound eyes reflecting the corridor's strip lighting. It froze, and so did Orla. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, human and Reiki, predator and— what prey? The galactic community certainly classified humans that way. Deathworlders, yes, but their strength lay in endurance and adaptability, not raw predatory power. Orla slowly lowered herself to sit cross-legged on the floor, making herself smaller, less threatening. She kept her hands visible and her movements glacial. The cub chittered, a sound that wobbled with uncertainty. "What are you doing?" Lewis hissed through the comm. She could hear his footsteps now, echoing from somewhere behind her. "Building trust," she murmured. Then, against every regulation in the station handbook, she began to hum. It was an old Earth lullaby her grandmother had taught her, something about stars and sleep and safety. The melody drifted through the corridor, soft and rhythmic. The Reiki cub tilted its head, scales shifting from orange to a curious yellow-green. Minutes passed. The cub took one tentative step forward, then another. Its claws clicked against the metal floor, each one as long as Orla's finger and sharp enough to puncture her suit without effort. She kept humming, kept her breathing steady even as adrenaline sang through her veins. Lewis appeared at the corridor junction, his hand hovering over his emergency beacon. His eyes were wide, pleading with her silently to stop this madness. But he didn't move either. He knew Orla well enough to trust her instincts even when they seemed suicidal. The cub was 5 meters away now. 4. 3. It stopped just outside arm's reach, lowering its body close to the ground in what Orla recognized as a submissive posture among pack hunters. The chittering came again, softer this time, almost questioning. "I know," Orla whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know you're lost. It's okay." She extended one hand, palm up, fingers relaxed, an offering of peace in a language older than space travel. The cub stretched its neck forward, nostrils flaring as it caught her scent. For a heartbeat, Orla was certain she'd made a fatal mistake. Every instinct screamed that this was an apex predator, that mammals like her were supposed to run, to hide, to— The cub pressed its snout against her palm. It was warm, the scales surprisingly smooth. Orla felt the creature's rapid heartbeat through that contact, the terror that matched her own. Slowly, carefully, she ran her fingers along the ridge of its head, following the pattern she'd seen Reiki pack mothers use in documentary footage. The cub's scales shifted to a soft blue, contentment, relief. "Orla!" Lewis breathed, wonder replacing fear in his voice. A roar shattered the moment. The pack mother appeared at the far end of the corridor, massive and terrible in her fury. Her scales blazed crimson, her claws fully extended. Behind her, 3 station security officers scrambled to keep up, their weapons raised but clearly uncertain. The cub squealed and bolted toward its mother, scales flashing with joy. But the pack mother's eyes remained locked on Orla, who still sat cross-legged on the floor, one hand extended where the cub had been. Lewis moved to stand between them, but Orla shook her head slightly. She remained still, non-threatening as the massive Reiki approached. Each footfall resonated through the deck plating. The pack mother stopped where her cub had stood moments before. Her nostrils flared, taking in the same scents her offspring had. Her scales flickered, red to orange to yellow, confusion bleeding through rage. Then in heavily accented but clear standard she spoke. "You unweighted did not harm?" "No," Orla said simply. "I wouldn't. Why?" The pack mother's eyes narrowed, all four of them focusing with predatory intensity. "Prey runs. Prey hides. Prey does not comfort." Orla smiled, tiredness seeping into her expression. "Maybe that's the difference. We're not prey. We're just human." The pack mother studied her for a long moment, then made a sound deep in her chest. Not quite a purr, but something close. Her scales settled into a deep, respectful green. "The dead of the pack mother is acknowledged, human Orla." She lowered her head in a gesture that made Lewis gasp. "You showed mercy to my cub. This is remembered." As the Reiki family departed, the cub looked back once, scales bright with happiness. Orla waved, and something in her chest loosened. Lewis helped her to her feet, shaking his head in disbelief. "You absolute maniac." "Probably," Orla agreed, watching the Reiki disappear around the corner. But someone had to wait with them. That, she thought, was what humanity did best. They waited, they stayed, they reached out their hands even when it seemed like madness. In a galaxy full of predators and prey, humans had chosen to be neither. They'd chosen to be kind,